this is one of the best microphones I have ever used. Hi there. This week I am going to be reviewing the Sanken CS-M1 shotgun microphone. As far as I'm aware, the shortest shotgun available on the market. As always, I'm testing with the same methodology. I set my microphones to be at the same peak level, measure the noise floor, and then read out 20 sentences that are between 1 and 9 words. I test out character voices, sibilants, plosives, proximity, etc. I do normalize the audio so that it can be better matched to other microphones. But other than that, I do no editing, no second takes, just the adjustments to balance the noise. I'm using 2 microphones this week as a baseline for measurement. The first of them is the Deity 3S, which I no longer own, so I cannot hold it up in the air for you right now. Let's have a look at the frequency responses for the microphones now. If you look at the frequency response for the Deity 3S, it is a pretty wobbly curve. Pretty normal, I guess, for a short shotgun, but you know, quite... Not exactly the flattest curve in the world, but it's a very impressive short shotgun. It's the size of a small diaphragm condenser. It competes against shotguns, and it's the weight of a portable USB microphone. And the Deity 3S is 148 millimeters long and 44 grams in weight, which is just phenomenally light. It has relatively low self-noise, 12 dBA, and this is one of those videos where it's important to mention the CCIR self-noise too, and that is 24 decibels. As a result, I get a noise floor with a 3S of minus 64 decibels. And, you know, I was a big fan of the microphone. It was my travel microphone until I replaced it with the Sanken CS-M1 for reasons that will become clear during this review. In fact, because I keep my 8060 inside my head box behind me here, I'm actually talking into the CS-M1 right now. So the Deity 3S is £299 from Wex Music and $249 from Amazon US. And as always, there are affiliate links in the description. The second microphone I'm using, and this is included as a baseline mainly because of its size more than anything else, is the Sennheiser MKH8050, including the Shure A15HP high-pass filter used inline. Now, if you look at the frequency response for this microphone, you would expect the microphone to be rather bass-heavy, with a high noise floor as a result. Now, the noise floor is dealt with by the A15HP, but you might expect it to over-exaggerate my voice at the expense of clarity and also sound a bit distant due to a drop at the top. What in actual fact you get is a very interesting sounding microphone that I am not a particular fan of, and you know, for that reason I don't actually own it anymore, but I can see why it's a fantastic Foley microphone. The 8050 has self-noise of 13 dBA, and with the A15HP I get a noise floor of minus 66 decibels. You don't even get close to 60 if you don't have a high-pass filter on it. I did record a whole audiobook with this microphone, but I regretted that decision and changed it for the subsequent audiobook. I think I allowed the high quality of the microphone to weigh more than how it sounded. You know, like anyone, I can be a bit of a sucker for it's expensive, it must be good itis. It is a much higher priced microphone, £1,000, $1,500, and, you know, far pricier than this week's microphone, which was, as I said, the Sanken CS-M1. Now, this has a slightly mad frequency response. I would call it extremely present based on the frequency response. You know, there's a big boost in the frequency. And I would also expect it to be extremely hissy, as in sibilance. It is a ridiculously light microphone, though. It's not quite as light as the 3S, where the Deity 3S is 148 millimeters and 44 grams, and the 8050 is 74 millimeters, but not a shotgun, and 55 grams. The CS-M1 is also 55 grams, just like the 8050, but it is 103 millimeters long. I mean, that is so insanely short. And kind of, it makes sense that it's a bit heavier than the 3S because it's got to compensate for that tiny length somehow. I also love that the CS-M1 feels weightier, not just the increased weight, but it just feels more substantial than the 3S. It feels much less like a toy. The self-noise is 16 dBA, and they do not report the CCIR self-noise. And I'm going to come back to that in a future review because the microphone you're hearing me speaking to now is my CS-M1. The microphone you're going to hear in the tests is the CS-M1 I loaned a few months ago, and you know, loved it enough that I went and bought myself one. But that, yeah, I'm coming back to that in a future review. The astonishing, frankly, noise floor I managed to get is minus 69 decibels, which is fantastic. And, you know, it will not surprise anyone that it replaced the 3S as my travel microphone. And briefly, before I managed to get my hands on the MKH8060, which I love, review coming up soon, it replaced everything. It was my everything microphone. You know, I used it for travel, but I used it in here. I used it all the time. Currently, it's on sale for £615 in the UK from Thomann. That is not an affiliate link. I do not have an affiliate relationship with Thomann, but I did want to share the lowest price I could find. And from the US, again, not an affiliate link, BH Photo and Video, $895. Now, let's, as always, listen to the tests.
Cue dramatic music. Cue dramatic music. Cue dramatic music. Or don't, we're not your mom. Or don't, we're not your mom. Or don't, we're not your mom. Crunchazoids. 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 Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Precision is not an option. Precision is not an option. Precision is not an option. Talk to someone who gets it. Talk to someone who gets it. Talk to someone who gets it.
I don't think we should go in there. I don't think we should go in there. I don't think we should go in there.
I brought you a spoon. I brought you a spoon. I brought you a spoon. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. I'm the best magical dog. I'm the best magical dog. I'm the best magical dog. All are safe under my protection. All are safe under my protection. All are safe under my protection. Roll up, roll up, roll up, roll up, roll up, roll up. You just got mud on my shoes. You just got mud on my shoes. You just got mud on my shoes. I was never in the shadows. I was never in the shadows. I was never in the shadows. Client said it'd be easy. Client said it'd be easy. Client said it'd be easy.
I'm going to count down from 3 and then... I'm going to count down from 3 and then... I'm going to count down from 3 and then...
Kill them all. Kill them all. Kill them all. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. They're right behind you. They're right behind you. They're right behind you.
Okay, having listened to my regular 20 sentences, or 60 read-throughs, considering there are 3 microphones, you will also know, if you've watched one of my videos before, that I like to compare how the microphones sound after they've had processing applied to them. Now, I apply very similar processing in each case. I don't put the kind of effort in that I would in one of my regular FX chains, or one of the ones that people buy from me. But just comparing them with a similar FX chain that only differs in terms of EQ. And for that, I use the start of Winnie the Pooh. That is a cat in the background. For the start of that, I use Winnie the Pooh, and let's have a listen to that.
Here is Edward Bear, coming downstairs now, bump, 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 on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs, but sometimes he feels that there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels that perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom and ready to be introduced to you, Winnie the Pooh. Here is Edward Bear, coming downstairs now, bump, 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 on the back of his head, behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs, but sometimes he feels that there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels that perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom and ready to be introduced to you, Winnie the Pooh. Here is Edward Bear, coming downstairs now, bump, 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 on the back of his head, behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs, but sometimes he feels that there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels that perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom and ready to be introduced to you, Winnie the Pooh.
So, what are my conclusions? My conclusions are pretty much universally positive. In fact, shall I jump straight to what I didn't like? Like every damn microphone, it struggles with the piglets test. You know, the I don't want to go in here. Something around my recording space clearly resonates at that frequency, so I can't really blame the microphone. Only I think one microphone has ever done well on that test. And the other thing I don't like is there is a lot more inter-unit variability than I'd like. Although maybe there isn't more than normal. Part of the reason why I even know this is because the CS-M1 comes with a unit-specific frequency response chart. The only other microphone I have that does that is the Octaver Mark 12. MK12. And, you know, I love the fact that the CS-M1 does that. And I'm going to come back to that in a future review because there's a different self-noise level as a result. So, on to what I liked. I think the sound is richer than either of the other 2 microphones. It is not only less boomy than the MKH8050, it is less sibilant than the 3S. And I'm surprised by that. You know, as I said, the frequency response would make you think there's going to be a lot of sibilance for the CS-M1, but there's really not. So tonally, it often sits between the other 2 microphones. It's got the best of both, and it doesn't have the weaknesses of either. I think it's got a fantastic transient response, and to my surprise, that increased transient response is not paired with increased sibilance. Again, I expected more sibilance. I did not get it. I think it's got the nicest proximity effect of the three microphones, where the 8050 just gets muddier, and the 3S adds quite a lot of coloration when taking advantage of the proximity effects. The M1 just adds proximity. It just sounds nearer and adds a little bit of bass. And overall, I think there's a wonderful crispness and clearness in the Sanken CS-M1 that isn't there in a lot of microphones I've tested. Overall, to be frank, this is one of the best microphones I have ever used. It is astonishing, and it's got all the flexibility of a small diaphragm condenser that yet has all the advantages of a shotgun microphone. And, as long as you get a good unit, it's just fantastic. And for the price, I think it is fairly astonishing. Now, what I will say is it is no MKH80. And that's what I'm coming to next week. So next week, come back and join me for the review of what is my absolute favourite microphone at the moment. It blows everything else out of the water, even the CS-M1. And it also blows it out the water on price. So come back next week where I will be reviewing the Sennheiser MKH8060. And I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.